Okay, so you guys can hear me, but I can't hear you. So I can't see when you're typing something out. Just type it out in the chat window and I'll try and give it attention when and if I can. You have about 3 minutes to fill in the attendance. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. No, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please do fill in the attendance and then we'll get started as soon as the timer lapses. Let's move these. So last week, Friday, you had your first practical session, assuming all of you had that online, correct? Okay, so this week you're gonna have it on campus. It is a bit different. So for the people that are going to have their practical sessions online, you just need to know which assistant is assigned to you. And then as soon as marking starts, you can send that assistant a direct message. They'll mark, give you feedback. The reason why we do this is so that you don't have to share your information with other people in the same group. So your feedback from your marker is going to be a one-on-one session. So send them a direct message, they'll reply to the direct message. The channels I've created on Discord are for general queries. So if you don't understand a certain part of the question, ask in there, they'll reply in there. But please do not send screenshots of your code to any channel. Just send it directly to the assistant if they want. The reason being is if you do take screenshots, there's nothing stopping the other students from taking your code and presenting it as their own. Okay. Speaking of which, on Discord, I have started to ban a few individuals from my server. Reason being, they did not change their username to just their student number. I think I've banned about 50 people this morning. So the only way you can get access back into the server is if you change your username back. I mean, if you change your username to your student number, then I will allow you back in. I do check that maybe once a day. So if you do change it today, chances are you'll only get access next week. What does that mean? It means if you are in an online group that week and you're not on the server, you're not going to get marked. You're going to get 0. Same thing applies to the ones that are going to be on campus. If you're supposed to be on campus for the practical assignments and you're supposed to be there at a certain time and you're not there, you're going to receive 0 for the practical, whether or not, even though you have submitted it. Okay, so we've got about 44 seconds left. Do you guys have any questions? When are we getting marked for practical 00 is a question from the online group. Practical 00 will get marked the same time that practical 1 gets marked. So that's next week, Friday, during the practical session. The assistant will mark practical 00 first and then mark practical 01. That shouldn't take too long. Practical 00 is an empty project, so it should take about a minute for them to mark that. Practical 01 is the one that will take maybe a little bit longer. How do you know our markers? So if you log on to Eve under practicals, you should see, or when you're submitting your practicals, you should see you are in session this and your marker is this person. There should be someone's surname there, or you are marked by marker 11 or something along those lines. I have posted on Discord what the numbers correlate to. So if you are like in group 11, who's group 11's marker? So you do have that information on Discord and on Eve as well. Okay, so we're going to stop the timer here. I am recording this session. Yes, I am. So let's get started with today's lecture. Before I do that, are there any questions about anything? There are no questions from the online people in the venue? Nothing. Okay, so let's get on with it. Give me a second to get everything on one page. Where is this? Oh, there we go. There is. So today we're going to be talking about algorithms. This is part 2 of algorithms. Remember last week we did a problem. The problem we had last week was, and you had homework for that as well. And the problem was the University of Johannesburg would like you to assist them with a computer program that will be provided to learners to calculate the average of their grade 12 results. You may assume that all the learners who use this program have 6 subjects and only 6 subjects. Everyone remember that question, right? Everyone remember their homework? How many of you guys did your homework? Got like one person in front and one in the middle. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, this isn't high school. I'm not gonna go around looking at who did their homework and punishing you guys if you haven't. But the idea behind these homework exercises is to get you guys to do these things by yourself. It's always easy to watch someone else do something and your understanding of it becomes kind of warped because you're watching me do it, and because I understand what I'm doing, you're thinking you understand it as well. Until you have to put pen to paper, that's when you realize I don't really understand this as much as I thought I did. That's why we give you these exercises, so that if you get home and you try to do the exercise and you fail at it, then you know that you don't know as much as you thought you did. But if you don't do them, then there is no learning curve there. Okay, let's move on. I think I moved one slide too many. No. And this is what we got down to. You got an algorithm you were asked for. What are the variables that you're going to declare? Last week we did say you're going to need six variables for the marks from the user. You're going to need one for the total and one for the average. And at the end of the day, that's what they look like. At the bottom here, you've got 1 to 6 for the marks. That's in blue. You have your total, that's black, and you have your average, which is ideally what this whole calculation is going to add up to, and that is in orange. So what do you do with this information? The homework you had is declare the variables for this. So this would be ideally something that you did. So you would have private mark 1 as integer, private mark 2 as integer, mark 3 as integer, mark 4, 5, and 6. Then you would have private total marks as an integer. Then we have the double. We have an average as a double. The reason why we're putting the average as a double is there is a possibility of there being a decimal number when we add and divide that up by 6. So that's why it would be a double. Yes? Is there a difference when declaring variables if you use private or dim? If you use private or dim? Yes, so private has a different meaning to dim. So in the meantime, just use private. When we get to using dim, we'll explain the differences between dim and private. Then you have to go back and change it from dim to private. There is a significant difference between the two, and then they aren't interchangeable as you think they are. Yeah, so private is what we're going to go with until such a point as we do introduce dim. But for interest sake, private is for global variables, dim is for local variables, and we're not using local variables as yet. Everything we're going to be using is going to be on a global scale. Okay, so the gentleman in front's question is very valid. We are giving you practicals without all of the information you need in order to do those practicals. Again, we do that on purpose. We are aware of the fact that currently some of you don't have what it takes to finish practical 1. We do know this. We are aware of the fact that you can't finish practical 1. But we give it to you the week before and teach you about the stuff the week after to allow you guys to go out there and try and figure out how to do it, right? Using different things or things that we've already taught you. As this gentleman has said, he's used dim. I don't know where he found that, maybe in high school or Google searched it. But what he did is he managed to find something that works, although it was incorrect. But the point in all of this is the learning curve. He has found out how to do it, and then I'm going to teach him how to actually, and in more cases than not, you will find out that the way I want you to do it is more inefficient than the way that you found on any other platform. But the point is you only submit work that we have taught you. Okay, so if there is something you found that works, but it's not something we've covered in the week, please do not submit that in your weekly practicals. Okay, for those of you who took a shortcut with an array, remember that we haven't done that yet. So there is a way where you can have mark 1 all the way till mark 6 in one variable as an array. But again, because we haven't done that yet, we want you to keep it as simple as possible. So each variable will be declared independently. Hello. Sorry we started without you. Okay, so what do you have to do now? We've got our algorithm, we're happy. What are we going to do now? What's the next step? What are we going to do now? Yeah. We changed that? into machine code. Okay, so basically that gentleman is saying we're taking what we have from English into a language that the computer will understand. Yes, eventually, not yet though, but yes, that is a right answer. Let me just see online, they say we start writing code. Well, not so quickly. Start writing code planning. Well, we are planning, our algorithm is the plan. So not necessarily. The next step is to see how it's going to work. Before we start putting in code or turning it into machine readable language, we need to figure out what we are going to do. So we are revisiting the algorithm. So if you revisit the algorithm, it says you need to get 6 marks from the user. Store these 6 marks in the variables that you have created or you have already. Add those 6 marks together and get a total. Store that total in the total mark field. And then divide that total by 6 to get an average and show that average. Okay. There are a few things that are missing here, or a few things that are open to interpretation. Can anyone pick one of them up? Yeah. Forget, you should say input. Okay, so what does get mean? How do you execute getting something? Yeah. You said something. Obtain. Okay, get, obtain. It's the same. If I tell you obtain something, am I telling you how you're going to go about doing that? If I tell you get something, do you know how you're going to go about getting it? No, you don't, right? So which is why the get there is left up to interpretation. We don't actually know how we're going to get this information. So these are the important parts that we need to then look at. How are we getting this information from the user? How are we storing this information? We know where to store it, but do we know how to? No. Show the average back to the user. Do we know how we're going to go about doing that? Is there a medium that we've been told, use this to show the user their average? No. So we need to iron out those missing pieces. We need to get to a point where we understand fully how we're going to do that. So after that, we can start coding. And if we look at our circle again, it starts at understanding and analyzing the problem. Would you say we have done that thoroughly? We do understand what needs to be done, right? We have developed an algorithm. We do have an algorithm. And design language is pseudocode. We have explained that already. And then you start programming your code. Oops. Sorry, I think I skipped a few slides there. Okay, we did this. No. Come on. Okay, this is where we were. So basically, the unfortunately part is we've already discussed this. To go, we can't just get stuff. We can't just show people stuff. We need to know how we're going to go about doing that. So if you look at that, get is open to interpretation from the user. How are we getting that from the user? Show to the user is also open to interpretation. So now we need to look at how we are going to do that. Next page says how. Basically, how is this going to be done? So think about it as human-to-human interaction. How would you otherwise do this as a human-to-human interaction? How would you get marks from another person? Ask them, right? What are your marks? They'll tell you, and then while they're telling you, you can do the calculation in your head and finally tell them back verbally what the mark is, right? So it'll be something like this. My marks are as follows, and then got it. I'll start calculating, and you get the average and you give the average back. That's how we as humans communicate. But computers do it a little bit different. It's not just telling. As the gentleman said, it needs to be machine readable language first and foremost, but the getting and delivering are a bit different to how you would do it as a human being. Then here's how computers work. What you need in a computer is an interface. So you need to have something that the user is going to be interacting with. So it says when it comes to a computer, the user must interact through a user interface. We've all seen a user interface before, right? Not just in informatics. Like whatever you do on your phone or on your computer is a user interface where the application you're currently running, be it WhatsApp, be it Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, there is an interface that you are going to use to interact with that application. Usually if it's on your phone, it's by button clicks or presses on the interface itself. You press something, something else happens. Is anything going to happen if you don't press anything? Chances are no. You need to give it an input in order for it to give you an output. So what would a form like that look like? So we need to get 6 marks from the user. What would you say that is as far as working with interfaces is concerned? Yeah.
I'm thinking if there would be a component that's going to be a text box.
Text box, okay, but right now you're talking about how it's going to be given to the computer or the program. What would you say it is? It's an input, right? So that is called an input. It is what you are giving the program in order for it to do something with it, right? And if we go to show the average, show the average back to the user, what would that be? An output, right? You're giving the program something, it does something with it, and then it has to give you back something else. It's a whole process. So that would be called an output. So let's do our design based on that program. And it is really important that users can make sense of your interface. So last week in the 3 tutorials, I did a mock interface where I just put random things on the form. Did that look user friendly? Was it intuitive? All the buttons were labeled button 1, 2, 3. The text boxes were all over the show. We did not know what that program did, but there is a way of making it look pretty or look functional at least. So each item on the left over there is called a control. So in Visual Studios, when you open it up, there's a toolbox. Everything that's in that toolbox is a control that you can drag and drop onto the form. Your form is essentially your canvas where you can put all of these controls on. So it's a component that can be added to your Windows form. To work with them, each control must have its own name. So each and every control has its own name. Last week, every button had a name. We had button 1, button 2, button 3, text box 1, text box 2, label 1, label 2, form 1. Okay, all of them had some sort of name, but that name was not descriptive enough. Do you know what, if you had to run into an app that has button 1, do you know what button 1 does? No, so you need to change that name. You need to make it descriptive enough so that the person that's working with it understands what is going to happen or has an idea of what's going to happen when I press this button. Okay, if you see a button called save, what do you think happens when you click on that button? It should save whatever it is, document whatever it is that you're working on. If you see a button that says close, when you click on it, you are assuming that it's going to close the whole application. Same thing applies. When you drag and drop things onto your form, you need to make them informative enough so that someone else who's using that application understands fully what each and every button is intended to do. So to distinguish between the different types of control. So last week we actually spoke about how Visual Basic allows you to have a user interface, which is the front end and a back end. These two things are connected. Okay, so when we have all of these controls on the form, again, button 1, text box 1, and all of that, if we're changing the names and removing all of those button 1 and all of that, let's say I say there is a calculator app again, and the button is called, the button has to add. So I change the name from button 1 to add. And then we have an input that should take in a adding input. And then I have that input called add as well, right? On the interface, can I see the difference between these two adds? Between the button add and the text box add? Well, yes, one is a button, one is a text box. Can you physically see the difference between them? Do you know which one is which? Yes, right, because you're looking at them. They're right there because it's actually on the form itself. So it would be something that looks like this. Something that looks like this. So you'd be able to see what it is, right? When we go into the back end, is there a distinction between those two ads? No. Will we be able to tell which ad is a button and which ad is a text box? No. So how do we know which one we're referring to when we are writing code? Is there a way? Yes. Yeah, I don't want to change the names. No, both of them are adding components. So I'm going to call them add. So is there a way besides changing the names? Okay, changing the names, what am I going to change them to? Give me an example. Okay, cool. The answer is literally on the screen. Yes. Okay, so it says we usually follow a certain naming convention. So in informatics 1A, we use a prefix control. We prefix the control names with the control type. So I have a button that adds, I have a text box that adds, or rather that shows the add output. The difference between those is right now, if I look at my form, I will have a Windows form, which is essentially the canvas, as I said, which all your controls go on. Think of it as a container for where all your code goes. And we create, when you're creating a new Windows form project, an empty form project is set up. So there is an error that we found in Visual Studios. We have had this error living with us for about a year and a half, 2 years now. Microsoft can't be bothered to fix it. So we have to deal with it ourselves. I'll show you how to deal with that error in the tutorials this week. But essentially, if you try and change your form's name to FRM something, your whole system crashes. Has anyone experienced that? Where it says there are build errors and you haven't written any code. All you did was change the name. And it all went to hell. Anyone online experience that? Okay, so that's a bug that came with .NET 6.0, unfortunately, and .NET 4.7 still has that error as well. Basically, what they're doing is the issue is when you change the form name, it changes on the form, it changes on the backend, but it does not change on the designer. So then it tells you, I don't know what this new form is because the designer name is not changed. You need to change it on the designer, and then it should solve that problem. Have you tried that? Okay, let's change it. Basically, if you try run it and it says it's broken, don't click on run previous build because that's not going to assist you. Say, no, you don't want to run the previous build. At the bottom there on output, it should highlight where the error is. Double click on that and it will take you to the page where there's an error. But again, we will go through this in the tutorials during the week, so do not worry too much about it. So yes, if it's a form, what prefix are we going to use? Yeah, FRM. So whenever you see something in the background or in the back end that starts with FRM, do you know what it is? It's a form control. Okay, so forms will be FRM. Again, they have two. So there's the name and the text. There's a difference between the two. The text is what the user sees when they are running your program. But the name is what we refer to that control in the back end if we want to make any changes to it. Okay, does that make sense? And the name property also needs to be unique in order for there to be a unique identifier. So if it's FRM calculate, can you have another form in the same solution file that's called FRM calculate? No, you can't. Why can't you? What's the reason why can't you have two forms with the same name? Sorry? I still can't hear you. You can't distinguish between the two of them. Okay, that's the reason why all of you have a student number. Do you know why you have a student number? Anyone? Do you think UJ just likes giving people student numbers for no reason? What is the idea behind your student number? So you can be uniquely identifiable through that student number. Some of you have the same name. Some of you may even have the same surname. Because we live in South Africa, some of you might even have the same ID number. Okay? So to try and mitigate all of that is we use your student number that uniquely identifies you in any UJ system. So the moment I put in your student number, it will be able to identify you as being that individual. Same thing applies here. The name property of each and every control on the form, including the form itself, needs to be uniquely identifiable. Okay, so on the next page, so forms are named with a FRM prefix, that's form. We can also set the heading on the form as my example. So the heading is the text on there. To set the above, we need to select the form and choose change the appropriate form properties. So if you are on Visual Studios, you right click on the form. One of the options there will be properties. Under that properties tab, you should have a name and text property along with a host of all other properties. Please do not waste your time and energy changing any of the other properties because they're really not worth it. We're not going to mark it just because, okay, not that we're not going to mark it. It doesn't matter if your page is green, yellow, or pink, or you've changed the fonts, or you've changed whatever. The only two we actually care about that you have changed is the name and the text property of all the controls. Okay, so the rest, don't worry too much about that. In your spare time, then by all means, you can go around, play around with it and see what wonderful and weird things you can do with the properties. That is entirely up to you. And what does that look like? It's over here. If you right click, trying to find my cursor. If you right click, there's a question. Guys, I can't find Friday's tutorial. It's only the Thursday one. And only the Thursday one that I can find. Yes, unfortunately, I was unable to, not that I was unable, I forgot to record Friday's tutorial. But then now I'm going to make it a trend. I'm just not going to record Friday tutorials. There'll be Tuesday tutorials and Thursday tutorials to pick from. We essentially discussed the same thing in all three practicals anyway. Someone's hand was up. Unfortunately, as I said in the beginning, there is no audio that's coming out of the online feed. I don't know if this is because I am teaching both classes at the same time. I can only read. So if you have a question, please type it out in the chat window. I will give it attention when and if I have the time. Okay, so everyone has seen this, right? If you right click on it, you will have properties. The one that we want you to change is the text one and the name property as well. So name from form one to my FRM my example. Once you change it to FRM my example, try and run it. It's going to crash. We've discussed this already. We'll show you how to fix that error later on in the week. We can also change the current text property from my example to something else. So for the form change name, because I haven't shown you guys the solution, try not to change your form name. Just keep it form one for now and deal with, carry on with the problem at hand. As soon as I show you how to fix it, then you can go ahead and change your form name to FRM, whatever it is that you want to name it. Also, just because it has an FRM does not mean you can name it whatever you want to name it. It needs to make sense in some way. I need to be able to, from seeing your form name, kind of get an idea of what this thing is supposed to do. Okay, don't name it FRM form A or something like that. It needs to have a descriptive name at least. And here's a name property. And we also have text box controls. So how do we get input? So in Visual Studios or in Informatics 1A, we use the text box control as an input device. This is how you're going to essentially get something from the user. So it says the text box control can be used by a user to type in the input. It can also be used to display a result back to the user. So in the meantime, we're going to use one control for both input and output. You will find the text box control in the toolbox. Drag and drop one onto your form. Text boxes are named with a prefix txt. So txt, if you see something called txt num1, That's text box number 1. That's an input for the first number. This means if our text box is meant to store a name, we would probably call it txt name. Okay, we spoke about the name property and a text property. What do you change the text property of a text box to? Huh? Yes. You're supposed to leave it like that. Why are you supposed to leave it like that? It's for the user to enter stuff. Okay, so it's a text box. It stores text. We're going to leave the text portion open to allow the user to at least put text in there so we can get that text from the user. Does that make sense? So we never change the text property of a text box, or we never fill in the text properties of a text box. We leave it open, and that will be used by the user as a form of input. Does that make sense? Okay. And there it is, drag and drop. You've seen this already. Text box on the toolbox, drag that, drop it onto the form. People need to stop calling me when I'm giving class. Labels. So with a text box, if you just see a text box chilling there, do you know what you need to put inside that text box? If they're asking you for your name, your phone number, your email address. Oh, speaking of which, there's just, you people do the weirdest things as far as security, POPI, and all of that is concerned. How many of us are aware of the POPI Act? It's got like 2, 3 people, 4 people. So the rest of you don't know what POPI is. It's Protection of Personal Information Act, something like that. So basically, it is the law that is stopping me from printing out all of your marks and pasting them on the wall and saying, go and look at your marks on the wall. You have the right for your personal information to be protected and not given to other people without your consent, first and foremost. But also, there was on Discord, some of you guys were trying to get a WhatsApp group going. Why? Anyone? I'm really genuinely asking, why would you want to have a WhatsApp group? Anyone? I'm not going to blame you and think it was your idea. I just want to know what your take is on it. Anyone online? To complain as students. I've given you like 4 different channels on Discord to complain as students, right? And if you check in some of those, we've never actually said anything in those channels. But the reason why we want you guys to communicate in a forum that we control is to avoid certain things. Firstly, such as abuse. Okay? The moment you enter into a WhatsApp group, what information are you giving away to the people in the group? Your phone number. Okay. Are you giving away your phone number to the people on Discord? No. What is your username on Discord? Your student number. Is your student number a secret? No, everyone should ideally know your student number, okay? Do you see where I'm going with this? If someone is harassing you on Discord, you can always come to me and say, this person is harassing me. Do I have the right to do something about it? Yes, I can. I can call them into order. I can call them to order. I can remove them from the Discord channel. There's multiple things I can do because I am the administrator of that Discord channel. Okay, can I do something once you are in a group full of 300 students and one dodgy guy decides to take your number and start calling you? Do you think I can do anything about that? No, I can't. Okay, same thing. There was a student earlier in the chat who decided to just say, hey guys, I need help. Here's my phone number. What do you think is going to happen? The next person I see posting their student number, their phone number on the chat here or on Discord, I am going to open a, what's this? OLX ad and say you're selling puppies. So you're just gonna have random people call you up and say they're interested in buying puppies. Please don't do that, okay? There is a lot of things that could go wrong when you're giving out certain information about yourself. And that's why we're trying to, by all means, try and protect you from those. Again, with the WhatsApp group, I'm not saying you guys shouldn't have a WhatsApp group. You guys are adults. If you really want to have a WhatsApp group, go ahead. But don't come and complain to me when something dodgy starts happening, because we've warned you against those things. Hardly the person sitting next to you, you don't even know them well enough. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, I got sidetracked. What was I talking about? So enter if you want. Yes, the WhatsApp group, enter if you want. As I said, we are not going to take any responsibility for anything that happens there. Before Poppy, please add me to the group if you've started it already. So there's a gentleman or lady on here that says, if you guys have already started the WhatsApp group, please add them to it, because yes, I don't know why. Same here, please. So there's a lot of people that would want to join this WhatsApp group. So if you are on the WhatsApp group, please do get in contact with these wonderful people and then add them there. Oh, we're talking about text boxes. Yes, that's what we're talking about. Back to text boxes. So that text box doesn't say anything. You don't know what information you need to put into it. Oh, now I understand how I got the phone numbers and all of that weird stuff. Okay. Text boxes. Do you know what they're asking you for there? No, you don't. Okay. So you need to label your text boxes. Because we cannot change the text property of the text box because it's an input, we need to have something that accompanies it that tells the user what we need from them. Okay. And that's where labels come in. So on its own, text boxes can be confusing without any caption to accompany it. And we therefore make use of labels to do this. Labels are similar to text boxes. They can be found in the toolbox, and labels are named with the prefix LBL. We don't usually change the name property of a text box, of a label. Anyone care to tell me why we don't bother changing the name of a label? Yes.
It's not likely that you're going to refer to the label in your code.
It's not likely that you are ever going to refer to your label in your backend. We don't usually change anything on labels in the backend. They're solely for descriptions only, captions, to tell people, please enter your name. Are you ever going to change anything about that label? No. So we generally don't. We're not very fussy about you guys not changing the label names, because you're not never going to refer to them in the backend code. So this is what it would look like. Here is your text box, and on top of it is some label for this text box. This would say, please enter your name, please enter your phone number, please enter this, please enter that. It gives the user an idea of what information needs to go into a certain text box. Okay. But labels can be used in the backend as output. One person said, no, I just said earlier on that we are going to use text boxes for both input and output. So that rules out labels as an output device for informatics 1A purposes. And that's what it would look like. Drag and drop the label on there and change the label name. So what will our interface look like? This is ideally what our interface looks like. This is Prof. Lung's idea of what the interface looks like. I kind of think it's a waste of space. But yeah, there is the caption of the form, change to grade 12 average calculator. We've got Mark 1 all the way till Mark 6, and we've got average. Text box. What's missing? There's no button, right? Why do we need a button? Yeah.
The way I see it, the button could be used to submit that info to the computer itself so that it knows that I have the input and start processing to produce the output.
Okay, so lady in front says the button is used to let the computer know I've filled in stuff. Now it's your turn to do stuff. Basically, I just summarized what she said. That's not exactly what she said. Okay. So anyone else have a different opinion of why we need a button? Yeah.
I think the button is where it's how to calculate the average and then submit it into the average.
So basically what the lady in front says, the button is to tell the computer, I've done my part. Now it's time for you to take the information I've given to you, do something with it and give me something back. Okay. I tend to agree. Online says that's where the code is written. I get that. We require a control that will trigger our code. So something that will trigger the code, let the computer know, as I was saying, I've done my part, now it's your turn. So i.e., when we're done entering all our marks, the program should calculate. But there is no special way of just the program sitting there going, I think they filled it in now. I shall do something about it. No, right? You need to trigger it. That's what Basic Visual Studios is a I forgot, and I get paid to do this. It's a action-driven coding language. Yes, that's what I wanted to say. Action-driven coding language. In order for something to happen, something else needs to have happened before that. There needs to be some sort of trigger that triggers the next event. There has to be, just like when you're scrolling on one of your social media apps, you need to give it input to say, I want to go to this feed now for it to know what it needs to do. If you just stare at it, nothing's going to happen, right? You need to do something in order for there to be a reaction. So enter the command button. This is a button the user presses to prompt the program to do its own business. And buttons are named with the prefix btn. To change the actual button on the, no, to change the actual label on the button, set the text property of that label to press me. Please don't name your buttons press me. We want to know what's going to happen once we press the button. So it would be something like calculate, add, execute, next, close, or whatever the case may be. And this is what it's going to be. It's a big ass button there that says calculate average. So after you're done filling in all of the averages, you click on the button. Ideally, what should happen is all the information given to you over here should go into this big button, and then eventually something should come out of the other end. Quite simple, right? And then when you do your interface, this is design stuff, by the way. This is that handwritten part. So you're going to, before you start coding, you're going to say, what is this going to look like? I think this is what it's going to look like. It's going to have, again, and this holds true. Have we started coding this? As far as classes are concerned, have we started coding this? No, we haven't. The only thing we've been doing till this point is designing it. We have designed the algorithm. We know exactly what it's going to look like once we implement it as far as the backend is concerned. Now we're saying, what is it going to look like? So when you draw up your design, your interface on your design, you need to put labels on there. So this is like your blueprint. This is your map. So you're going to say, the first one's going to be called txt mark, the second one, third one, the last one's going to be called txt mark 6. The button is going to be called BT and calc average. That text box is going to be called txt average. The form itself is going to be called FRM calc average. So the idea behind this is once you are done with your design, you should be able to give it to another student and they should be able to execute it exactly. Go on to Visual Studios, do exactly what you wanted them to do. That's why I said it's more like a blueprint. Any questions on this interface? Yeah.
For your prefixes, if you don't name it txt and btn, like give it different name without the prefix, is that allowed?
That is allowed. You're just not going to get the marks for it. So the prefixes are very important. Yes.
For the outputs, for practical learning, where there's like the longer, is it fine if I use a rich text edit, or do I have to use a normal?
You have to use a text box. So if it's multiple, if it's a bit long, you can use multiple text boxes. Okay, yeah. Yes.
Do you both change the name and the text on the button?
Yes, because the name itself is, as you can see, everything written in blue is the name. So the name of the button is BT and calc average. The text on the button is calculate average. Same thing with the form. The name of the form is FRM calc average. The text on the form is grade 12 average calculator. With the text boxes, the text in the text boxes is nothing. Why is that? Because we said that is what you use as input, but the names are txt mark 1 and so forth. Okay, I think we're out of time because that gentleman was there in my window. Yeah, we're out of time. So we'll continue from here next class. There's basically just one more thing that says next lecture, writing the code as part of our event-driven programming. So yeah, it's basically done. Online people, will we give our papers in person during the practical session? Yes. So those of you that are coming into the practical sessions this Friday afternoons, you come with your handwritten design in hand. Those of you that are online will need to submit it. I will create a Google form where you do submit it. Just take a snap scan picture of it and submit it onto the Google Drive. Okay, go away. Just give me a second. Let me stop the recording.